grins. I'm just gonna run through and show you guys how I made this wood resin ring, which I literally just made because I kind of wanted a fun, silly afternoon project to do that I could throw on Sketchfab and be like, look, it's a wood resin ring. I was curious to see if I could do it. Anywho, so I had this ring shape just chilling in Maya because I make a lot of rings for 3D printing and stuff, so I had the basic shape done. To get the sort of cracked, broken wooden effect of like a chipped piece of wood that you see a lot of times on the edge of wood resin rings, I basically just made a plane, applied a texture deformer to it, and then applied like a very fine noise texture, and it made this like super grainy, gross look. And then I literally just scaled the plane so that it would end up being a lot sharper and grosser, and that kind of made like a chippy wood-ish look. Once that was done, I just extruded the entire plane to give it some thickness, turn it into a box. I flattened the bottom because it doesn't need to be a spiky mess of grossness. So you can see that I have one made here that I just like did to show you guys a demo, but I had some made from before. I started working on this yesterday before I have to leave. And basically the general idea that I'm going for is I take this wooden band, I'll duplicate a second copy, and then I'll basically cut out the wood from the band ring. So I'll have like half of the band ring that's spiky, and then one half I'll basically texture like wood, and the other half I'll texture like resin, and they'll meet each other perfectly in the middle, and have like a nice non-clipping seam. That's the theory. It usually works pretty well. So one thing, I did an iteration of this yesterday, and I had like the spikiness going straight across the ring, and it looked really boring and just like really symmetrical and gross. So all I'm doing now is just going through and with soft select, grabbing some of the vertices and just moving the edge of the chopped up bit a little bit to make the edge a little bit less even. I did that on both sides. Then I also went through and decided what the heck, I'm gonna give it a like little chip of wood in the center. Just give it like make it like really, really irregular just because I can. I don't know, I kind of like the look of that better. It's like a weird thing. So anywho, so once I did that, I combined my two meshes with the like jagged edges just so I can drag stuff at the same time. So I just separate those meshes, and then again, make sure you have 2 copies of the ring in the center, and take one of those ring copies, one of the gross wooden edges, and I just did a Boolean difference on that. And that should chop out half of the ring. And then repeat that for the other half of the ring, and then you have your 2 chunks of ring. In order to import this into Sketchfab and have different materials, you need to have different materials assigned to the different halves of the ring in Maya as well. So I also added, I made half the ring a different material, and then I went and uploaded to Sketchfab, which took forever. It turns out that I accidentally reversed my wood and resin texture, and I fiddled with it a little bit to see if I liked it. Turns out I did not like it, so I went back, swapped the textures in Maya so I wouldn't need to like redo all the settings, and then re-uploaded that to Sketchfab. I basically ended up just twiddling with some settings in Sketchfab. I did add a ground plane with a random texture that I got off of Google. If you go on Google, you can there's a way to filter by usage rights, so I'm just like, cool, grab anything labeled for reuse with or without modification, whatever. I didn't feel like dealing with weird license stuff. So just grabbed a few random textures, threw them on my ground plane. They ended up being really low res, so I just sort of, next time I went back into Maya, I cheated and I just scaled the UVs on my ground plane super, super gigantic, because I'm just like, I don't want to deal with this right now. Cough. That's pretty much all I did for the ground plane. Then I took that texture, applied like a slight bump map to it, and then ended up mapping it into bump map and also reflection. I don't know, I just kind of think it looks neat, but it's a little weird. I might go back and redo it later because it's kind of funky looking in the end. But yeah, so that's all I did for the ground plane. And then I also went back into, I went to textures.com and I downloaded a few different wood textures because I wasn't really happy with the one that I had. Tested those out, and then I actually went back into Maya and I made like a weird little sort of field of spheres, which were going to act like bubbles in the ring, and then I basically ended up cutting them out of the resin part of the ring. And I did that. I didn't want the outside of the ring to have like a bunch of broken bubble marks on it. So what I did is I took the original ring shape, extruded it in ever so slightly so that there'd be like a slight basically piece of resin between the bubble and the outside of the ring instead of a divot in the outside. And then I did a Boolean intersection on the bubbles and that extruded in. And then I uploaded that again to Sketchfab. Takes forever, but uploaded to Sketchfab, and then I went through, and unfortunately Sketchfab doesn't seem to support refraction within refraction, which probably makes sense because I imagine that's disgustingly computationally intensive. However, I picked like Dither or Mask. I played with the other ones until I found one that like wasn't totally awful looking. Twiddled those settings and then had some sort of vague bubbles. I'm still not entirely happy with the way the bubbles are sitting. There's like a big gap that doesn't have any bubbles in it. It looks kind of weird, but I can go back and fix that later if I want. I don't really care right now. And then I pretty much did just like fart around with settings until I found something that I was reasonably happy with-ish, sort of. I might go back and refine this later because it still looks like a little bit awkward in my opinion. I also might just get rid of the entire ground plane because I'm not entirely sure I like how that looks. But anyway, this is the final ring. Yay. It took me like half an hour to make this. Cool.